Hey there, everyone. In our last video segment, we did a very quick gesture of our still life items. Um, I'm now going to take this to the next step to show us how we can cite and measure so that we can get our proportions to be accurate and our placement to be accurate. So I'm going to recreate this really quickly, just as a gesture review. Using the vine charcoal on its side, not as a point. Getting too heavy into line at the beginning will make it so that we are not as willing to make corrections. On my olive oil bottle, I have some complicated parts where it goes from a cylinder to a pyramid to a cube. But I'm going to ignore that pyramid right now, and I'm really just getting the basic size and placement of things. I made a note that the almond butter is about in the middle of the olive oil jar. So it's like a loose mapping. It comes down below. So I could be easily drawing with line right now, but I really want to just draw through the shapes, keep it really light. I intentionally, in my still life, when I set this up earlier, brought my peach forward, which means it's lower in the picture plane, making it look like it's closer. Whenever we draw a cube, I want you to always start with the edge that's closest to you and drop the vertical, because you can compare it to where your peach is. And then I'm going to find the next vertical, which I can see is higher and about this far from the almond butter. And then I can't see the back one, but now I'm going to loosely lay in this set of information. I'm going to note where the box comes out of the back of the almond butter jar. And then I'll start to really lay it in more. Again, I want these to be fairly fluffy, not super dark. And just a loose beginning of where the forms are in the picture plane. People often do gestures again and again so that they can really see the whole scope, really understand it. And what I learned from this very quick gesture that took me maybe 40 seconds is that I would like to see the edge of the box, and I think I'd like to lift it up a little and make it all a little smaller. So I'm going to do it again with that knowledge. And here's where the map making starts. Right now, if I'm looking at my picture plane, I can see that the olive oil bottle is about in the center. So if I start it over to the right a little bit more on my next page, then I know that I'll fill up over here and I'll have room for the edge of my box. So let's try it again. Take note of that. Yeah. You should spend most of your time looking at your subject, maybe 80% of the time looking at it. It's very light. I'm not trying to get the accurate qualities of the olive oil bottle. I don't want to necessarily show you that it has two sides yet or that it has this pyramid shape. I'm just getting the overall size as it relates to the almond butter. So again, I'm kind of loosely mapping, and it's a little easier to map this time because I have the previous knowledge from the first gesture I did a second ago. I think it's a little wider. This is a chance for you to correct, alter, shift. I'm going to do the vertical. I can see that it comes part way through where the peach is, I look at this distance from here to here and see how far it is from the bottom of the peach. I'm going to look at the corner of my almond butter and find this other vertical. And I'm going to draw it longer this time so that I can give myself options for moving it around. I'm going to look and see where that angle comes out of the back of the jar. And I think you can see where I'm like adjusting and changing. I'm going to try to find the back of my box. I still think it's off the picture plane, but I'm going to go to the back of my olive oil. And I think this is about here. So I'm intentionally not really putting in value. I'm just trying to mess it up a little bit so that I can be willing to move something a ½ inch, which is a pretty big deal. Okay, so then once you have this very light, loose drawing, then I want us to measure. So I'm going to start by holding the pencil with a straight arm so that it doesn't change scale. And I'm going to, like I did in my last video, I'm going to use the almond butter jar as my constant measurement. So I'm going to put the tip of my pencil at the top of the jar and my thumb down here and close one eye so I can get that measurement. And then I'm going to compare that to other things so that I can change the shape based on this. So it looks like my olive oil bottle is a little bit bigger than my almond butter from my peach up. So I think I want to make this a little taller. So I made a little mark. So I'm slowly starting to build that bottle and knowing I wanted it to be a little higher. Again, it's like I'm not using line necessarily yet because I don't want to get too bogged down in an outline or an edge that I'm unwilling to change. That's the nice thing about the vine, is it's fluffy and forgiving. Okay, now I'm going to see how wide the bottle needs to be. So I'm going to use that same constant on the almond butter. And I turn my pencil and compare it and to see how far it is here. So it's like 2/3. So then I take this measurement from here to here. Yeah, and that's about 2/3. That looks pretty good. And then I also want to double check where this edge is in relationship to this almond butter. So I think it's pretty good. So I'm going to start to settle on that, agree that that's where I want that to go. I'm now going to check some verticals. I want to see how it relates to the peach though first. So I'm going to take that almond butter measurement again, and the peach should be half the size of the almond butter. My peach is too big. Yes. And then I have to decide if I make it higher or lower. And you can see how I just changed a whole major component by like a ½ inch. That's a pretty big deal. And this vine charcoal is so easy to move around without getting caught in the mix of it. Okay, so I'm starting to build the shape, find the form, and now I'm going to do an exercise where I just hold the pencil straight up, which is like a plumb line, and I want to make sure that I have things in the right placement across the picture plane. So I'll start with the almond butter again, just because it's a nice place to start. And what I'm going to look for is if this line lines up with that side of the olive oil. And it does. I have it in about the right place compared to the still life. Then I'm going to maybe come up from the peach and see where it hits on the olive oil and the side of the almond butter. Yeah, right on. That's perfect. That seems exactly where it is. I'm going to hold up a vertical here on the still life and make sure that this area here looks about right. We're going to call this the negative space, from the edge of the peach to the edge of the olive oil, and we'll see. Yeah, spot on. Yeah, it's about that far out. So the idea with this measuring is that you can keep moving through. If it helps you, you can draw these through these verticals, and that is creating a map to show you where things lay. And once you feel good about the placement, then we can go in and we can start to really shape the figures. And it's not, again, we're not doing value yet. We're going to get there. Value meaning we're putting the lights and the darks on the forms. It's more that we're just reshaping. So we just talked about measuring right now, and you might be struggling with this box. So I'm going to do another lesson in a different video about how to make sure that you can get your box to sit down in place, and how that can work. We're going to talk a lot about basic shapes, building other forms, as the class goes on. And you can see here that we have a pyramid, a cylinder, a wider cylinder, a cube, and that is starting to look like our bottle. So if the mood strikes for you to continue kind of building this out a little bit, you can, but this is the beginning stage of what we do with a first gesture, trying to understand the placement, trying it again, seeing how things can start to map, and then we started to measure using this distance as our constant, and then I measured it against the still life to see how many fit in the different areas. I compared things to make them come together. Take that out of there. Okay, so if you guys could please set up a simple still life and try 3 or 4 gestures. I'll have you submit 3 so that I can just see that you're starting to get the basic understanding of it in your sketchbook with your Vine charcoal. Okay, we'll see you soon.